All right, welcome to another edition of The Persistent Rumor. My name is Chocolate Yoda, spelled Yoddah, because film studios are litigious. And with me, as always, that big hunk of a man to my right. He is my heterosexual life mate, Chancleta.
Present. Hello. I was listening to Jerry Seinfeld.
Oh God, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Now Jerry Seinfeld, he's had a great career. Can't take that away from him. He's one of these guys that he talks about. It's like, oh no, I just do my act. I have an act. I don't understand why everybody just has to throw away their act. That's a perfectly good act. And do it all over. Like, he's just been doing the same act, and he just every once in a while just adds a new joke or a new layer to it or whatever. So
then he's not doing his act over and over again. But here's the thing about Jerry Seinfeld. Number one, I can say that I don't recall ever laughing at anything that he's done in terms of stand-up. It's not that he's bad. He's a good stand-up, but he has gotten a lot of the benefit of celebrity, because if you think about the show Seinfeld, that wasn't Seinfeld making you laugh. That was Larry David making you laugh.
Right.
Because he was really the brains behind all of that. And of course, TV sitcom comedy is a different animal than stand-up comedy. And, with Jerry Seinfeld, he gets the benefit of the doubt. He's the grand poobah of the stand-up set, and he's, from what I can see when he talks about himself, he's pretty full of himself. He's kind of bought into his own mythology, and good for him. But the reason why people burn material is because crowds are unforgiving if you do the same material over and over again. He doesn't experience that because he's not on the comedy circuit anymore, right? So, he went from being, a very safe Tonight Show type of comedian to being a superstar on a sitcom. And, again, not taking away anything from him in terms of being a stand-up comedian, he just never made me laugh, and that's a reflection on me more than it is on him. But there's a lot of people that are, considered these brilliant comics, and I'm like, okay, they're not really doing it for me.
Well, it's just, I just think it's, he's just from an older era, like, at least, if you look at older comics like Rodney Dangerfield, Jay Leno's, like those kind of guys, you know what I mean? Like, these are guys that just kind of like, hey, they've just been doing comedy, and they'll go and they'll do their act, and it's they'll change a couple of jokes here and there, they'll add a couple of new things here and there, and just keep performing that. You have old singing artists like Tony fucking, I forget his name.
Bennett?
Tony Bennett. And Tony Bennett would just keep singing his hits, right? He would just go
but
around.
You have to understand there's a huge difference between stand-up comedy and singing.
I understand that, but the point that I'm making is that he would just do that even when he got to the point where he couldn't sing anymore, right? It didn't matter. Like, you were just in it because it was Tony Bennett, and you had a certain nostalgia about it and whatever it is, and maybe that's what he's holding on to. Maybe there's something about that celebrity that he has that, people are just like, oh, it's Seinfeld. I still watch his shows, and, something like that. And hey, listen, you had a great career because of it, so why not keep rocking it? But to say that, that to other comedians, that you shouldn't have to throw away your act or anything like that, like to someone like Chris Rock. That's because he's out of touch.
He's not living that life. That's my point. The Tony Bennett thing is, honestly, I don't even get the tie-in. But the thing about singers is that, for whatever reason, audiences want singers to do what they know from that singer. When it comes to comedians, audiences want new. They always want something different from a comedian. It's a weird thing. I think it has something to do with the way that the brain processes spoken word as opposed to sung words in a musical context. I read an article about that a while ago, but I don't remember the exact mechanism, but there is something different about how we process the spoken word versus the sung word. And, that might explain it, but it is an interesting phenomenon. Like if you're a comedian and you do a special and then you go into clubs and you try to do the same material, people will boo you off stage. We heard it already, That's what they do.
Yeah. But it's funny to me that he gets away with it, right? Like, okay, that's what he's been doing. That's what he rocks with. And he could just keep doing the same thing if he wants
but who
to.
gives a shit? Let him. I mean, again, he's not a touring stand-up comic. He does comedy whenever he feels like it. It's not.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He's in a different. He's the exception that has nothing to do with the rule.
That's a good point. Yeah. Anyway, enough about Jerry.
I think we should devote the rest of the episode to Jerry.
Yeah. Who's your favorite comic right now?
Dave Chappelle.
Yeah, right? Like, by far, I don't even see competition at this point.
Well, I mean, there are great comics out there. As far as competition, yeah, Bill Burr.
Yeah.
Who else? Big J. Okerson.
I love Big J. Okerson. That dude is like, I actually want to see him live. When it's possible to start seeing people live, I would love to see him live. I've seen
comics live. It's no different than it is on your television. But it's a fun night out because you're surrounded by people laughing and stuff.
I don't go to comedy shows too often, and I just, it's just something I want to start doing when, it's time to go back. Like, and as far as Dave Chappelle's concerned, I mean, that I can go to a show where Dave Chappelle is literally just talking like a fucking, I don't have to laugh once, and I could just listen to that dude talk because he's always so insightful and when he speaks, and he has a very interesting, outlook on things, right? Like a certain perception that he has that's pretty in touch with humanity. It's pretty great.
He's a brilliant guy. I've seen some people criticize him online, and of course everyone has the right to their own opinion, but what I find interesting about this criticism is that it mostly misses the point. They criticize something that David puts out as not being funny without realizing that it wasn't meant to be funny.
Gotcha.
Sometimes Dave, like, he just put up Redemption Song. It's a little under 11 minutes of material, and it wasn't meant to be funny. It was just meant to express himself and thank his fans for supporting him in his recent issue that he had with Viacom.
Right.
And so for people to be like, oh, shit wasn't funny, I'm like, you fucking idiot. It wasn't a comedy routine. Like, why? Like, what?
It was actually one of the most brilliant things that I've seen him do as far as a body of work.
Really, Redemption Song?
Yeah, like as far as like not comedy, but as far as like how he conveyed his feelings, like how even the way he started, I believe, even the way he started and basically did a callback, I should say, of what he started with. I thought that was brilliant. It was very well thought out. It was very well said. You felt that energy, man. You felt when he was 14 years old, you felt that part that he told you about when he was 14 years old, and he carried you through that long journey and told you about, like how he felt that and I'll take it. Like, that was like, oh shit. Yeah, that was fucking amazing. And so that, so it was like, oh, let me take some of the things I've learned in comedy and apply it to this sort of, mini TED talk that I'm going to do, and it worked out brilliantly. He's a great, he's a great conveyor of information. It's great.
Yeah, well, he's a philosopher, and I tend to gravitate toward certain types of comedians. When I talk about Bill Burr and Dave Chappelle in the same breath, if you listen to Bill Burr, his form is different than Dave, but his function is the same, right? He's a philosopher. He's just an angry redhead philosopher, but when you really pay attention to how he deconstructs a subject, he's pretty brilliant at it. Joe Rogan has the same ability in that Rogan can take a hot subject that some people are literally afraid to tackle, and he will set it up in a way that it becomes undeniable by the end of it, even if it could be considered controversial. I mean, Bill Burr did a routine about men hitting women, right? Now, that's a topic that a lot of comics wouldn't even begin to have the skill set to approach.
Right.
But not only did Bill nail the conversation, he made it brilliant, he made it funny, and he was right in what he was saying. Yeah. And he got to the end of it, and you're like, God damn it, that is undeniable. Like, you just can't get around it. And I'll tell you, I'm going to end the comedy conversation with a person whose name I would mention if he were still alive in the same context as these other comics, and that is Patrice O'Neal. Oh, yeah. And he's at the forefront of my mind today is because I just did something that I almost never do, which is buy content. There's a documentary that was just released a few days ago called Patrice O'Neal, Killing is Easy. And, this year, come November, is 10 years since he died. And he was one of my favorite comics. I still listen to his routines all the time. Every year in November, I watch Elephant in the Room. And I think by all accounts, that is the comedy special that was destined to launch him into mainstream success. But chances are he would have found a way to fuck that up. But I will say this. I'm at this point, I think it's safe to say that I have consumed hundreds of hours of Patrice's material, even though there's thousands of hours of it. But, he was the number one guest for Opie and Anthony. They had him on more than anybody else. He had his own radio show for a little while, which is where I came to learn about Dante Nero. And his philosophy around relationships was something that really resonated with me. I never codified it mentally the way he did, but when I heard him talking about it, I was like, oh yeah, this is how I've been all my life. Yeah. Like I can literally go back to the first girlfriend I had when I was 15 years old, and I had the mentality that he talks about, the frustration that men have with women, and the way men have to navigate being with women and wanting to be with women and all that other stuff. And you and I have touched on it from time to time. And when I do my chocolate chat, presented by The Persistent Rumor, I talk about, relationship stuff all the time. I just did one that I released recently, yesterday, as a matter of fact. And I'll put the link to that in the description. But, he was the rare comedian, again, like George Carlin, like Richard Pryor, like Bill Burr, even like Big J. Okerson. Like Big J, he's a guy who sits on a stool and really, like, in a very casual way, and in a way that's kind of sneaky, he says some really, really smart stuff while he's also saying some really funny stuff, And I gravitate toward those types of guys because I love language, and I love the fact that comedy is a magic trick. And it's the same principle as magic. It's all about sleight of hand. It's all about taking someone down a road and then surprising them at the end, which is another reason why people don't like to hear jokes over and over again, because it's once you hear the surprise ending, you can't be surprised again, right?
True. Yeah.
But Patrice was someone who devoted most of his mental energy to drilling down into the human condition and really getting to the core of it and examining it from every angle and coming up with observations that literally nobody else came up. Like if there were 100 comics talking about a subject, when Patrice got to that subject, it would be a fresh new perspective on it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And his comedy peers, like Jim Norton, another comic that I love, Patton Oswalt, although I don't know if Patton knew him, but when you look at guys like Rich Voss, like Jim Norton, like Dane Cook, like Kevin Hart, these are guys that came up with Patrice, and they have been saying for years, and then now captured on the documentary, like this guy was just better than all of us. He understood human beings far better than any of us did. He had a perspective that was more keen and concise and wise, and it's such a shame that he died in 2011 because he couldn't control what he put in his mouth. He basically gave himself his own death through his diet. And excuse me, I almost choked there while I was insulting a dead black man. Maybe there's something to that.
Drink some water, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing you're vegan or vegetarian. I don't know what the fuck you are. You're talking.
You mind your own fucking business. Anyway. But yeah, I mean, he remains one of my favorite comics. And you would think, like, when I watch Elephant in the Room, of course there are routines and references that are dated. But the main crux of what he was talking about is as fresh today as it was in 2011.
Yeah.
He just was a brilliant guy. He was a brilliant guy. And I really love the fact that so many comedians, like I watch podcasts all the time, right? And so many comedians just bring him up. Just like, oh, Patrice had a routine about that, blah, blah, blah. And I love that. I love that these people are keeping him alive, essentially, and I love that Vaughn was behind this documentary. And, long live Patrice O'Neal. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, man. And, we should definitely get together for some Elephant in the Room. I haven't watched it in a while. The first time we watched it, I was fucking beside myself. I remember how much I laughed at that whole routine, and it was just so great. And I, like you, I just felt the same way. I felt like that was, wow, this is what's going to take him to the mainstream. This was that was the comedy routine that he was working towards, and he nailed it, man. That was great.
And really, it's a clinic in comedy. If any aspiring comedian wants to understand how to frame a subject, how timing works, how crowd work works, pacing, if you just want to understand what masterful comedy is, just watch Elephant in the Room. It literally encapsulates everything that the best comedy is. So, again, thank you, Mr. O'Neal, for all your good work.